All right. Yesterday, we ran through the wine API, which we just created a simple app that you're able to create wines, update wines, edit wines, view a list of wines, and view individual wines. You should be relatively familiar with that whole process as far as with the routes, the views. And the only thing that kind of changed is instead of rendering an HTML template, we now pass our query set, whether it's all wines or wine by its ID, to a serializer, which converts that query set into a Python object. And then we pass that Python object back to the view. And then we take that view and we pass it into, or we return that Python object to a JSON response class, which converts it to JSON and serves that JSON to the user or to the browser. So any questions about that? Oh, all right, cool. So I'm in my wine project. I've deployed this to Heroku. I'm just going to make sure everything is working. I'm going to get this up and running. I'm going to go through all the requests, getting a wine, getting all wines, getting an individual wine, edit, delete wines. And I'll do that through Postman, just to make sure it's working initially. And then I'll convert it using the current code to Django REST framework. So can everyone see? Should I zoom in more? Is this good? Good. All right. So the first thing I'm going to do, I'm going to go into my my virtual environment. So I'm going to source venv bin activate. All right. Now I'm going to just Python manage.py run server just to make sure everything's working. Cool. It's working. Over here on in my Explorer, I've got the static files directory. I don't know where this came from. I know when we were troubleshooting, deploying to Heroku, someone had a static files. It appeared from somewhere. I didn't know where it appeared from. Mine also appeared from somewhere as well. Don't know where it appeared from. You don't necessarily need it. So I don't know where it came from. So if you get the static files directory just showing up, that's empty. Don't worry too much about it. It shouldn't hurt anything. All right, so I'm going to go to my browser. I'm going to go to localhost is at 8,000 and go to wines. All right, I've got 2 wines. So I've got with an ID of 1 and an ID of 3. I must have deleted that third one or that second wine. So if I go to ID 1, it serves up an ID, the first wine. And I can just kind of also inspect, just make sure everything's working. So I've got my URLs, goes to wines, goes to my URLs in my app. I've got the basic URLs with a wine list, new wine, wine detail page, edit wine, delete wine. I can go over to my views. You can see you got all my views, view methods, and the serializers. That's the new part of this process. Before we create a URL, create a view, create a template. Now it's going to be create a URL, create a view, create a serializer, and that's pretty much it. So that's all working. I'm going to open up Postman just to go through the post requests and all of that. All right, so what we got? So I'll go to localhost 8,000. Dismiss. I'll go to wines. I'll make a GET request to localhost 8,000 wines, and I'll send that over. So you can see all my wines. I can get an individual wine by its ID, do a GET request there. Great. I'm going to copy this over. I'm going to create a new wine. If I go to new, wine/new, make it a post request, go to the body of this request and get rid of that ID. I'm using body raw JSON, wine name. Does anybody get wine from Trader Joe's? Nice and cheap Trader Joe's wine. Anybody?
Oh yeah.
Yeah, $2 chuck.
Yeah.
All right, yeah. $2 chuck. There's another one, Organic Earth, I like, which is just a red wine. Great. Cheap Trader Joe's wine. All right, so I'm making a post request. I'm going to send that over. Hopefully everything's working. Cool. So I got it returned, ID of 4, name, all of that. And now I can go to like ID 4/edit. I think it's that. And I can edit this. So Joe's wine edited. And if I send that over, hopefully it works. So I got that didn't work. So let's see what happened. Maybe I don't need to have that. Let's see if that works. All right. Yeah. So I had a ending /, which I didn't need. So you can see that it's been edited. All right. So if I wanted to just make sure that wine exists, I can do a GET request to all those wines. There we have that. And now I can just do /delete to delete the 4th wine, make that a post request, send that over, wine deleted successfully. I can also go back to my browser and grab all the wines, and it's only those 2 wines because I deleted that 4th wine. Cool, I'm just making sure my app still works. All right, any questions about just going through that process of testing your API endpoints? Nope. All right. So let's talk about the Django REST framework. So why is this up here? So the Django REST framework is a library or package that gives us a lot of tools to make this whole process to serve up a RESTful API or to create our Django, utilize our Django apps to serve up JSON as an API. It gives us a lot of tools so we don't have to do all this stuff manually. Because typically in most applications, these are very common methods that you're going to have to do at different API endpoints, such as view a list of objects or queries, view individual queries, create, edit, delete, pretty much that whole CRUD operation. That's very common. So our Django REST framework gives us tools to do all of this with only a few lines of code. Same with serializing our data, because Django REST framework serves up JSON. And that's like what it's for, is to create RESTful APIs for our Django project. It does all this wine serializing for us as well, and only a few lines of code. So also with our URLs, these are very common URL like patterns. Like they might deviate a little bit, like you can have edit wine, or like this might be like before it or after it. But these are very common URLs to visit or to serve up JSON data. So Django REST frameworks provides us with a tool or some methods to create URL patterns similar to this, but again, in only a couple lines of code. So the first thing we actually need to do is install our Django REST framework library. So I'm going to clear the terminal. I'm going to come over here and do pip install Django REST framework, all one word, or all one without any spaces or dashes. Now, looks like I've already installed it in this project before. That's okay. So we've installed Django REST framework. If this is the first time you're doing it on this application or in your project, then you'll actually have it to install it. All right, so I'm just going to close some of these out and open up as needed. All right, now once I install Django REST framework, I'm going to go into my settings and add Django REST framework to my installed apps. And I can go to it's REST framework. Whoop. I'm just going to add a comma there. So I added REST framework to our Django project settings file under installed apps. So, all right, so I'm just gonna Python manage.py run server just to keep this up and running. All right, so the next thing we need to do is let's go to our URLs. And I'm gonna actually just comment this out. So when we want to create let's actually also do that. The thing we want to import is what is called we're gonna create a view set. So the first thing I'll do is from views. So we're not going to use this wine list, new wine detail from our views anymore. We're going to create something. So, and it's called a view set. So from views, we're going to create a wine view set. Import wine view set. And this is something we're going to have to create, this wine view set. Think of this wine view set is going to take place of the wine list, the new wine, the wine detail page, or the wine detail view method, the edit wine and delete wine. So this wine view set is going to replace all these view methods over here in our views. Oh, well, I just did something. What the hell? All right. Oh no. Yep. All right. That's okay. And then the other thing we're going to have to import is a default router. So from the REST framework, routers import the default router. And this default router gives us a bunch of default routes or URLs to use. So I'm actually, I'm just going to delete, I won't delete anything. All right. So I've got this default router and I've got this view set. So I'm going to say router equals default router. So I'm creating a new router and I'm going to register this router to, and this is like regex. So an empty, just regex, an empty string. And in that, so this register takes in 3 arguments or an optional 3 arguments. It takes in the URL pattern, which is, we're just going to keep it empty right now and going forward because this router provides us with the default URLs. We're going to add this wine view set and we're going to give it a base name of wines. And you'll see where this base name comes in. You don't really need to know where it comes or what were you doing with it. It's just underneath the hood when the URLs are called, it uses this wine's name as a base name. And just like we added the URL patterns, we define the URL patterns here. We're going to define the URL patterns to equal the router URLs. That's okay if that's not working right now. All right. Any questions about what I just did?
I think I may have missed this. Well, I probably did. But the so I've got the REST framework inside of the I think that was the settings file.
Yep.
Yeah, under installed apps. Where else does that need to be? Because on the urls.py, it's saying it doesn't recognize.
Did you pip install Django REST framework?
That's what I missed.
Okay.
Django dash REST.
No, it's all one
Dash
word. Django REST framework, all one word.
Okay, thank you.
Cool. Anybody else? All right.
Yeah, so wait, I'm sorry, for the router register, what are you doing with the regular expression?
So this is saying like what URL do you want? Essentially it's going to be empty. So it's
And then the router's just gonna push everything through there.
yeah, and you're going to see I can do like for route or for URL in URL patterns, print URL. If I do that, let's see if it shows up. It doesn't yet because it throws an error right here. But once I'll print out the URLs that this default router creates once we get rid of this error, this view set error.
Yeah, sorry, I think I got a little ahead of you, so sorry.
No, yeah. All right. Any other questions? So you can think of this default router giving us all the URL patterns, very similar. They're not identical, but it gives us URL patterns similar to list a wine, to create a wine, to view a detailed wine, to update a wine, to delete a wine, to partially update a wine. And you can see that if you framework, if you read the docs, where am I doing? Is router in here? So you can kind of see, where is it? Default router. So these are the different URL patterns that it's creating for us. So we'll get, post. So this is all like regex. So this is what that's creating. So it gives us all these abilities to get, post, update, patch, delete. All right. So we created our default router. Now let's go to view set, or the views. So in the past, let's actually come down here. We created all these very separate methods. We don't need that anymore if we're using Django REST framework. We don't even need JSON. We don't really need, we'll keep wine serializer. We don't need the wine form. We don't need the CSRF token. We don't need that as well. So the only thing we really need is our model, our wine serializer, which we're also going to update, as well as from REST framework, import view sets. So a view set gives us a bunch of, essentially it builds out these view methods for us. There's like 5 of them. There's like list, create, you can, again, in the documentation, Django REST framework, view sets, or view set. You can see it creates, where is it? It already has all these different methods that are creating for us. List, create, retrieve, update, partially update, and destroy. So that's what a view set, that's what we inherit from the view set. So I'm just going to delete that. Delete that. So I'm going to say, I'm going to create a class, a wine view set, which is going to inherit from the view sets model view set class. And this takes in 2 arguments, or it has 2 not parameters, 2 like attributes or variables. Query set And this query set is literally just a query to grab all the wines in the database. So this is the query set that we add to this wine view set. And the other thing we need, typically when we would run a method, like when we'd manually create a view method, we would have to do a query as well as pass it through a wine serializer or some sort of serializer. So the other thing we need to add is a serializer class. And what we're going to pass in there is the wine serializer. And that's literally all we need. And this creates these 3 lines of code, create all the ability to list all the objects, create an individual object, retrieve an individual object, update an object, partially update an object, or destroy an object. Questions on that? And you can override these as well. So if you want to customize each method, you can override and customize it. You just kind of have to read into the documentation and see what you want to, like how you want to customize it.
Hey, what's the difference between update and partially update?
So when you update, when you pass in the updated object, you have to pass in everything that's on that belongs to the object, such as like for like the wine, it's the name, varietal, description, and price. So you always have to pass in all those values when you do update. For partially update, you only have to pass in the value that you're going to be updating. So if you're just updating the price, the only thing you have to pass in is the price, the updated price. Does that help answer your question?
Yeah, that makes sense.
Cool. Awesome. All right.
Hey, Tom.
Yep.
Question. For the query set and the serializer class, are those names, can those names be changed or?
No, these are reserved keywords.
Got it. And the wine view set, that you can name whatever you want, right?
Correct. Yep. We can name this whatever I want view set.
Okay.
Yep. I'm pretty sure. I've never changed it, but I'm highly confident you can name it whatever you want. All right. So we created our URL patterns. We updated our wine view set or our wine views. The last thing we need to do is update our serializers. Let's actually come over here. So again, in here, we created, we manually created our serializer, which we don't need to do that anymore. So in order to, I'm just going to move that all the way down. So with the wine serializer, we need 2 things we need to import. We need to import serializers, the serializer module, as well as the model that we want to serialize. So I'm going to say from REST framework, import serializers, and then from models, import wine, because I want to serialize the wine. So in this one, I'm just going to class wine serializer because it's a serialized wines, and serializers dot model serializer because this is a serializer that serializes a model. If you have some other object that you want to serialize that's not associated with a model, you don't necessarily need to do a model serializer. And in here, we just need to have a class meta. This is almost very similar to like what a form looked like, if you remember like using forms. And the model, we want to serialize the wine model, as well as what fields do we want to include in the serializer. Let's do, what is it, ID? I don't remember. So wine name, wine name, price, varietal, and description. Whoop. And that is all I need to do. So let's actually kill the server. I'm going to clear the terminal and just run the server again. Hopefully everything's working. Great. Now let's go over to my localhost. Now, this is what it typically looks like when we serve up JSON in the browser. But since we're using Django REST framework, the UI is going to change as well. So if I go to /wines, so this is Django REST. It says, hey, you're using Django REST framework. This is what I'm serving up when I go to wines, like so. And this is what I'm returning. So this is what is actually being returned. And in here, you can post wine, you can update wine, everything. So I can see all the different, so that's what it looks like, JSON. But yeah. All right, you can see like raw data of what I'm passing in. And if I wanted to go to the individual wine 1 or wine 3, there we go. So yeah. And let's see if I can see. Let's look at these URLs. So if I refresh that. So you can see the different URL patterns that it's creating. So this name equals wines list. So if it just goes to an empty /wines, it runs this wines list method in the view set. If I go to this regex format, again, I don't know why there's 2 of them. I can't remember specifically why. Or if I go to like it has a primary key, it goes to the name wines detail. And this base name wines, that's where it's called wines list, wines detail. That's where that base name is. I can call this something else. And that base name, something else that's what's actually being called. All right.
So I got a couple questions, Tom.
Yep.
So is like our serializers page now taking on like the responsibility of the forms page because it is like through the REST framework, or is the forms page still needed if we're using the?
I don't think the forms page is needed anymore. And it's not the serializer that takes care of that. That is the view set. The wine view set is taken care of being able to post or edit new data. And I can just double check by using Postman to make sure that I can still create new wines. So post new wine, let's add organic earth again. I send that over. Uh-oh, what's going on? Post new, is it create? Post not, so that method is not allowed. Oh, yeah. Put patch. Let's actually go to Ankur, do you know how to create what the API endpoint is to create new wines
Um,
off the top of your head?
Yeah, so you need to do it without the new, just go back, go
Oh.
post to wines.
Lines. I gotcha. Yep. So there we go. Thank you.
Yeah, so obviously this isn't just magic. Reading documentation will point us to there. So there's set routes that we need to go to that I'm sure Tom will cover.
So if we look at where are those routes at? Django REST framework. So where am I looking at? So these are that's a simple router. So the default router. So these are the routes you go to. So if it's just /wines, and that wines is coming from, if I look at here, this is why it's going to /wines. So if I didn't have anything here and I just did that, it would, if I just went to this URL, it wouldn't need wines or anything like that. But there, so these are the URL patterns. So get post, put. So I'm just looking thick format, lookup. So if I wanted to, I just can't remember specifically off the top of my head what the URL. Let's actually go to Postman. So if I just went to line 1 and did get right there, if I wanted to edit that, what is it? Is it post? So you have to, again, read the documentation right here. So I can update a line. So if I do line 1, make it a put request. I believe that is it. Edit and send. Oh no. Lines 1. Look up. Do I need that ending /? There we go. Yep. So that's where that ending / you'll need. I can patch, update, patch. So if let's try to patch it because that's like partially update. So if I just wanted to update like the price, maybe this is now $8.99 or $199 due to inflation. I can patch that. See, just that got updated. Then also deleting as well. So you don't have to have the /new, /edited, /delete. It just depends on the type of request you're doing at each API endpoint or URL endpoint.
Tom, is it okay if you show us your serializers.py page for a second?
Yep. So literally like 4 lines of code that takes place of all that code.
Okay, perfect. Thank you.
Yep. Well, any other questions?
I mean, I'm having issues. Everything looks the same. I mean, you might have seen the chats. We're trying to work this out. I'm getting an error, type error, register missing 1 required positional argument view sets or view set.
Right here.
It says it's from urls.py line 19. So that's the that is the router.register.
So how many are you missing a comma, something? And we can take it offline. I don't want to have this in the recording.
Okay, that's fine.
But does anybody else have any just questions?
So when we were first going over this, you said that you prefer to kind of like make your own routes. Is that I guess professionally, like when we actually do move on to like doing this, I guess for somebody else or for a company, which way is kind of like the preferred method?
I can't speak to that. I'm sure sometimes they make their own route. I'm sure sometimes they, override. They might use the router, or they might not even use the default router. They might just use, the view sets or the serializer from Django REST framework. So you don't have to use all these together. But like you can just use the wine serializer if you want. Or just the view set. You don't necessarily always have to use all three of them together. But yeah, it just kind of depends on the company. So I've never worked in a production Django shop before. But Django REST framework is very popular because it does a lot of the heavy lifting, as you see, for you. It's like super easy to get up and running. Any other questions? So I would say do what you are most comfortable doing. So if you feel comfortable creating your serializers from scratch because you know it works and you kind of know what's going on, then feel free to do that. If you are comfortable with the wine serializer or the Django REST frameworks serializers, do that. Kind of just depends on what you want to do. All right.
And Tom, I do have another question for you. Well, I
Yep.
guess the first one wasn't a question. So I got it up and running. I'm on the local host and I see the REST framework, right? I don't know if it's pertinent to right now, but how do we actually make it look how we want?
When you say look how we want, do you mean so what do you mean by that? Just curious.
This
Well,
is
essentially-
our back end, Jonathan. I think the point is we're gonna use React to do all the front end stuff later.
Okay, so yeah, essentially
Oh.
we'll connect it with our front end, and this is just for show for us. Gotcha.
Well, yeah, so this is just to show you what the API endpoint looks like that serves up JSON. So we're going to connect this URL, this API endpoint to our React front end in their API file. So when you do fetch to localhost wines, we get a list of wines back, and then we parse through that on the React side and render components based off of that.
Cool.
all right.
Thank you.
Yep. All right. Do you want me to see me deploy this to Heroku, or we're good?
I wouldn't mind.
All right. So I've already deployed this Heroku once. Let's see. Crikey's verification code. So what I'm going to have to do is redeploy or like update. 3, 2.
You could delete the app and then just redo it.
Yeah. I mean, what would you rather have me delete the app or update? Go through that process again. Anybody have a preference?
Redo it, please.
I'd rather see the update. Oh, never mind. Did you need to see it again? Then go ahead and do what you got to do.
Well, let's see. Well, if might as well delete. Oh. Delete. All right. So I'll just create a new one. New app. Papa wine backend. Create app. So I created this app. So the first thing I need to do, I'm just going to close everything out. And I'm just going to delete the static files because I don't know what that does. So the first thing I need to do is create a proc file on the same level as my manage.py file, proc file. And in here, I'm going to create a web, what is it? Wine API I actually don't remember what it is. If I look at the curriculum from yesterday, come on, scroll down. If I scroll all the way down to here, I can read through. So create a proc file. So I created a proc file, and then I need to insert this web gunicorn WSGI. So I'm just going to copy and paste because I don't want to write it manually because the chances of me making a mistake is pretty high if I'm just typing it. So it's wine API. So create a proc file on the same level as my manage.py file. Great. Next thing I need to do is pip install gunicorn, which I may have already done, but I'm going to just do it again. So I've already satisfied that. All right, now I need to pip install Django Heroku. There we go. I may have already done that, but that's okay. So already satisfied that. Next, I need to import Django Heroku at the very top of my settings.py file. So all the way at the very top, I already have it there, but I'm going to paste it there just to make sure it's officially there. At the very bottom, I'm going to copy and paste this Django Heroku settings locals at the very bottom. So you can see it's right there. So it's at the very bottom. It needs to be the last line of code. Same with Django, import Django Heroku. It has to be the very first line of actual code. You can have comments above it, but there you go. Next, I need to freeze my requirements.txt file. So pip freeze requirements. There we go. There's my requirements.txt file. Next thing I need to do is create a get ignore touch.get ignore. There we go. I'm going to add my virtual environment and my Pi cache. Or something like that. It's yep. There we go. Great. So I have everything I needed to actually get my Django project ready to deploy to Heroku. So I'm going to close all of that. And now come over here. I've created my Papa Wine backend API, Heroku login. I'm going to do Heroku login. Press any key. It's going to open up. So now my terminal is connected to my Heroku. So now I'm like in the Heroku command line. All right. So I can CD into my project. I can get init. I'm already in my project, so I don't need to CD. So I can.
I'm sorry to cut you off.
Yep.
If you were just updating, is this where you would start?
Yes, pretty much. I would not right now. I would git add, or I'd do Heroku login, git add, git commit, and git push Heroku master.
Okay.
So I'm going to get init. Get Heroku login. So set git remote there. I can git add everything. So if you are pushing new code, you do Heroku login. Now do git add, git commit. Like if this is like my second one, I'd be like, oh shoot, added Django REST frame.
Hey, Tom, do you know what the -A means? I know what the -M means, but what does the -AM mean?
I don't know off the top of my head.
Okay.
It's like, yeah, I can't remember off the top of my head. But if you just had commit M, that would have been fine as well. So it's building. Everything's good. Hopefully everything works. Installing SQLite. Keep going. Building wheel for Sitecop G2. All right. Hopefully everything is working. Come on. Launching. Deployed to Heroku. And just because it's deployed to Heroku doesn't necessarily mean it's going to work. It just means it's been deployed. Cool. So now I can come over here, open up the app and go to /wines. Uh-oh, wines does not exist. What do I need to do? I need to run that Heroku run manage.py migrate to actually apply all my models and my database models to my Postgres database on Heroku. So there it goes. Now, if I come back over here, there we go. I've got an empty list. There's nothing in this database. So if anybody wants to go to Heroku Wines or Papa, so if I go to make a post request, to Organic Earth. So I'm doing a post request to Papa Wine backend Heroku app.com/wines. So anybody can visit that and make add any wine they want there. So if I send that, there it goes. Now, if I come over here, I can refresh. I've got that one wine. I can visit that one wine as well. All right.